Ooh, you know what time it is!
Give me a hell yeah!
Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know. Deuce and Mo.
Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo, Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know.
Do it for Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Hey. Do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings, it's my favorite show. Do it for Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Hey. Do it for Deuce and Mo. When it comes to the Kings. Big hopes and dreams as we cover our kings. Never cover the kingdom, but we loving our kings. And we covered your prayers as we doing our thing. Big Deuce with the pod, Lil Mo on the screen. Solo or together, still do it for team. Never switch up for $1 or revenue stream. So we always got each other, balance out the beam. Deuce and Mo, and that's the end of the theme. So do it for Deuce and Mo.
We are live! I think I just used the fuel left in my tank for saying we are live.
I was gonna say, like, how did you even have that? Even though we're good.
No, we are great, and let's not lose sight of the fact that we're talking basketball. What's up, everybody? How we doing? Hey, what's up, dude? How are you doing, man?
Hey, Morgan.
Hi.
What's going on, man? You rooting for us?
I'm rooting for y'all.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Let's go, Kane.
Shout out to everyone who was with us yesterday. The longest stream that we've, I think, done. That was close. I think
Wait, was that really?
I think it ended up being like an 11 hours, 42 minutes. And then we did a post-podcast, audio podcast
Dude.
after. Did clips. And then, I don't know, I got a few hours of sleep last night. But it's a post-draft. We got stuff to talk about.
And then we have Saturday. We have Keegan talking.
One thing at a time.
Slow down.
Today we got Bobby Marks, ESPN's front office insider, is going to be in a car driving to Bristol, Connecticut for an ESPN hit, and he said he would come on with us today. They'll be in about, 15 minutes or so. Okay, that's really. Let me take a sip of this coffee.
Why?
My brain just went a fog. I'm like, where am I going?
Oh, come on.
I got it. I'm back. Let's go.
It's just, here's the thing.
yeah.
It's just got to be sharp with Bobby. Bobby's
Morgan, you know me. I get locked in. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff. That's what I wanted to mention.
Oh, what?
Perspective for a second.
Oh.
Last July, that's when the NBA draft was. We on YouTube had that month 52,000 views on YouTube. For the month of July, that was draft month.
Okay.
In the last 48 hours, we have surpassed that.
So cool.
And it's just like, it makes me so happy to see our community continue to grow and that so many people stuck with us last night through our entire thing. So, and like the stream breaking down. So before we start things, thank you.
Thank you. You the real MVPs.
Oh, man.
You make this all happen.
I mean, Brian West, Adam Wojnarowski, Preneel,
Bobby Gerald, Sean Cunningham, Anthony Slater.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. Deuce and I were kind of recapping everything. We're trying to. We were so tired, but like after the 11 hours that we were on, we had to do one more podcast to do an audio version of it. And we were still very lively and had fun talking about it and everything. But
I'm hitting a wall this afternoon. We're on D-Lo and KC today at 12:15, so I got to make sure the tank's full for that. Yeah. I didn't even tell you this. A station in
you got something else?
A station in Iowa reached out to me, so I'm going on with them at like 2:30 this afternoon. So let's go. You know what? Let's talk about Iowa. Let's talk about Keegan.
When are you going to sleep?
Sunday.
Okay.
All right, let's get it started. Hey, first of all, Nate, Forrest, DJ, Joe, NBA Rig, the real Fox. How about this person? Sage81. I'm a new Kings fan.
Hey.
Maybe. We'll see. Hey, what's up, Shane, Chris, Tyler, Dilla, Swagman, not KJ, JKTC, Jeanette. Appreciate you guys all being here. Let's get it started. Deuce and Mo podcast. Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Hit my music.
Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know.
Welcome into the Deuce and Mo podcast. The morning after the NBA draft where the Kings landed Keegan Murray with the 4th pick. I'm Deuce Mason. That's Morgan Reagan, a jam-packed podcast for you. Coming up in just a bit, we're going to catch up with ESPN's front office insider, Bobby Marks, get his thoughts on the draft, what the Kings did with the 4 pick, what maybe they didn't do, and we're going to look ahead to the Kings offseason. What can they do to improve this roster? Morgan Reagan. I don't even know if I should ask you. How you doing, man? How you feeling today, huh? Not a lot of sleep, but how you feeling?
Yeah, God, so much. So many emotions. Yeah, I'm good. Just excited for this season to start. I mean, you know.
This is when I know more to start. I'm excited for the season to start.
Okay, I was trying to think of
June 24th.
What I was excited about, and it just took me this long to get here because I was going to tell you this before the podcast. I was like going to say, I'm excited to talk to Bobby Marks and get an outside perspective on the pick. And not only just the pick, not just this generic. You know, that's what I love about Bobby Marks when he comes on our podcast. It's not just like generic. He tells us how it is. Like even when Tyrese was drafted, you know, he was super excited about Tyrese. And like you don't hear Bobby Marks, his emotions go up and down. But I remember with that, truly him feeling happy about that. And so I'm curious how he feels about Keegan, how he feels about what happened in the second round and Monty trading away that pick.
Both picks in the second round, yeah.
So yeah, it's that's what I'm excited for.
Well, it's interesting to hear the aftermath. One thing I did hear last night, our guy Jay Bilas, who we had on just a couple of weeks ago, was on with Scott Van Pelt. I wanted to play this because Jay Bilas had some thoughts on Keegan Murray. Here's SVP talking with Jay Bilas.
It was a very lengthy night, Jay, and these players are so young, and at the top they're often drafted into circumstances that are pretty difficult. But if there's a player that you believe is ready to make a significant impact immediately, who would that player be?
Well, you would always start with the top 3, but I'm going to go to number 4, and that's Keegan Murray from Iowa, Scott. He's an older player. He's 22. Made a tremendous improvement from last year to this year. He averaged 7 points a game 2 years ago. This year, averaged 24. He can really run. He's a good defender. He's got great hands. He's not going to be on your Instagram feed with highlight dunks and all that, even though he dunks a lot. But he makes the right play over and over again. So while he's not spectacular in anything he does, at the end of the game, his numbers are spectacular. And I think Sacramento made a really good pick at number 4. You know, Jaden Ivey from Purdue was available there, who's, I think, the best athlete in the draft. But I think Sacramento probably got the most NBA-ready today plug-and-play guy in Keegan Murray.
So there he is talking about Keegan Murray as being the most NBA-ready player today.
I didn't, I heard people tweet about like, oh, Jay Bilas had some good things to say. I hadn't heard it yet because we were on for so damn long. But listening to that right there, that's cool. What I love, a couple things that he said that I actually kind of love is that, look, he's not going to be on your Instagram feed with all these sexy highlights. Great, don't care. He's not spectacular at one thing, but he's a spectacular player, right? And so I think sometimes there's people who go like, what are you elite at? And I get it. Those players that have an elite skill set can do some special things in the NBA, can take their game to the next level. But with Keegan Murray, if you're good at all those things, like you got just a solid player, and that Sacramento needs a solid player.
Yeah, again, I think the pushback on what you just said is if he's just solid and you drafted him at 4 and someone else, it turns out to Jay and Ivy.
Turns out to be a star.
Then it's like, well, you drafted a solid guy.
Right.
But I think they're, Monty McNair said last night's press conference, he doesn't buy the whole ceiling thing with Keegan Murray. So Keegan's going to help Sacramento next year. Monty's has some serious challenges in maneuvering with this roster, trying to figure out how to improve it with limited cap space. They've got the mid-level and biannual exemption, but most teams do.
Yeah.
So like that's the challenge there. You're competing with other teams to try to land some players, and then it's hitting the trade market. And I think maybe the biggest surprise really of the NBA draft for me was the lack of big trades. I mean, Adrian Wojnarowski was saying ahead of time that this could be busier than free agency with all the activity. I feel like there was a lot of talk. There was so much talk about number 4 with Sacramento. There was so much talk outside of the 4 pick with Sacramento, maybe talking to Atlanta about John Collins. We heard Collins' name involved in trade talks, Brogdon, so many names. And then there was very little activity. So I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know if the Kyrie Irving thing kind of changed what was going to transpire last night.
Ooh.
Just, that's a big deal. That's a big domino to fall in the NBA, and to see like what is going to end up happening with him in Brooklyn, if he indeed is going to be in a sign and trade situation when he's listed the teams. Well, according to Woj, you got the Sixers, the Heat, the Mavericks, the Knicks, the Lakers and Clippers, 6 teams. Like, I don't know if that changed things for teams either.
Yeah. And, I feel like, Deuce, you totally held on to Woj's words yesterday, being like, and he teased it. He presented it to you. Like he got you excited for a lot of action and a lot of trades, and that didn't end up happening. Again, was that just something that he maybe thought was going to happen because teams were saying that, and then he was trying to make people excited to watch the draft show? Who knows if that was part of his, strategy as well. Who knows? Either way, I feel like we should have a pretty busy free agency here coming up, especially with all the news that was going on with Kyrie. And now you have some big free agents, and you have some teams that got to make a lot of big moves.
I'm going to ask Bobby Marks about this, but something I brought up last night late in our long stream was, would it have been more beneficial for the Kings if they're going to put stuff out there, if they were the ones putting stuff out there, who knows, that they were going to get Jay and Ivy? Like that Jay and Ivy was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
So then Detroit really believes it, and maybe you can work out a deal to move down, then get Keegan Murray.
Was that going to manipulate a situation even more? Dangling that in front of people's faces, putting it out there in the media?
Because I think the Pistons looked at it and said, they're picking Murray. Do it. Like, go ahead. Let's see what they bet on it, and they got their guy. The Pistons were able to get their guy just by staying put. They didn't have to give up any assets, and now they've got Ivy, Duran, net cap space to maybe go after Miles Bridges.
You know how Woj tweeted out, Orlando has been keeping things really tight, and you didn't know about Paolo Banchero going number 1 until minutes, an hour before, whatever it was with the draft. With Sacramento, they kept things tight, we didn't hear anything that was going on. No one knew.
We heard a lot of like, hey, they could do, it was every possibility.
They could do everything possible. No shit. We all know that. You know what I mean? But then there was never like, hey, they really like Jaden Ivey and they're going to look at drafting Jaden Ivey. You know, it was always like, oh, they're probably going to trade and do something because everyone wants Jaden Ivey. But that's what everyone was speculating and assuming. I don't feel like it was reported out there a whole bunch of times like that is what the Kings want to do. You know, it was what other teams wanted to move up for Jaden Ivey, for Keegan Murray. And so anyways, it's like the Kings kept things really tight.
We appreciate everyone watching us live. Shout out to my guy, Homer James, who just donated $10. Give him a hell yeah.
Give me a hell yeah.
He says, seriously, the reason I love what you both do is this. You roll a 10-hour podcast yesterday, and then you are on first thing the next morning. Dedication, passion, your love for the Kings. Big kudos. Well, James, appreciate that. It was over 11 hours, closer to 12, so get it right, all right? Don't try to knock off an hour.
Hey, and big kudos to you, though. I mean, look at your passion. Look at everyone that's here. Like, all of the passion that goes into all of you guys spending this time with us as well. So thank you for making this all possible.
I said this last night on Discord and Twitter. Kings fans are different. And I know it's like every fan base, hey, yeah, we're all different. Every fan base is the best. No. As someone that is born and raised in Sacramento, I've seen other NBA markets. For everything Kings fans have been put through in the history of this franchise in Sacramento. Then you look at the last 16 years with no playoffs and, oh, the team's moving. Oh, they're going to Seattle, then staying. And on draft night, they're just as engaged. Even if they don't agree with the pick. If they agree with it, disagree, they're still engaged with it. And I'm not saying you can count on that forever. I'm just more saying, like, it's impressive. It's really impressive to me because I think a lot of fan bases check out.
Yeah. No, it's true. You see it. Not only do you see it in ticket sales and the way you look at games and you go, man, this game is empty. Not a lot of people are liking this product or this team. And with the Kings, you started seeing a little bit more of that shift with some pathetic losses. But at the same time, everyone is always ready for a fresh new year, a fresh new coach and everything. And guess what? There's a lot of times that I have a lot of confidence in it. So hoping this is the time that my confidence keeps going in the right direction.
Roman says, yesterday I worked, got drunk, sobered up, and the entire time Deuce and Mo were still going.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
NBA Rigged in the Twitch chat asked Deuce and Mo, were you a bit disappointed that we couldn't trade with Indiana and we could have picked Keegan at 6? I mean, I just think there's assumptions there, right? Like, did Indiana want to deal with Sacramento? Did they want to move up to 4 for sure? And would Keegan have been there? You know, like there was some talk that Indiana, if they wanted to move up, they wanted Murray. Maybe the Kings were like, no, we want Murray and we don't want to trade down there. But I like what the Pacers did. I like Benedict Mathurin. Now they've got a young backcourt with Halliburton and Mathurin that I think is super intriguing going forward. And they still have the ability to make some additional moves by moving on from Brogdon and Turner. They look good.
Hey, and before Bobby joins us, BW says, whenever that date comes, it's going to be great celebrating Sacramento's first championship with Deuce and Mo. Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, 2071.
We'll be like all gray and wrinkly. And we're like, we did it.
Yeah, remember when we were young? And
it's like hologram podcast by then.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man. Sage says, y'all want to know why I'm dipping my toe into the NBA in Kings fandom? Because I'm from Rochester, New York. Do you know New York? Do you know your team's history? Yeah, I know. They used to be in Rochester. Come on, man. All right. We got Bobby Marks in the waiting room. So let's admit him now as we get ready to bring him in. Oh, I thought he was going to be in a car. Let's go to him now.
No, I can't escape.
Oh, let me fix the screen.
He can't escape?
Not yet.
Yeah, there you go. We're gonna fix the screen.
I'm gonna fix the
screen. Do you want me to put something up? I can put.
No,
it's us.
Bobby,
it's
you're
all
good.
Us. Bobby Marks, man, are you tired today?
You know what? I think I was more tired last year because I had to do Sports Center at 7 a.m. last year, and at least I got to sleep till I don't know 7:30.
Oh my goodness!
Well, we appreciate you joining us. I think this is actually the third straight year you've joined us the morning
after
the draft.
It's just a matter of like what month it's been, right? It's been November, and then we did last year. I think it was August, and now we're back to normalcy. That it is We're in late June, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Great
it's
to be
late
back
June. I don't know.
around this.
We did a 12-hour live stream yesterday, which was
Oh, God bless
in,
you.
in hindsight. Yeah, so we're exhausted today. By the way, can we give some congrats to Bobby Marks?
Yes.
How about a little multi-year extension at ESPN?
I appreciate it. I appreciate it with the new deal that came with. You know what? You have to do all the international players that got drafted last night. So
That is awesome.
So I was practicing my Italian for the last couple of days. Procida and Spagnola.
Wow.
I love it.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Well, the draft is done. There was so much talk about, all right, what the draft's going to start number 4 with the Sacramento Kings. They end up not making a trade. They pick Keegan Murray. What was your reaction to the Kings drafting Keegan Murray?
It totally threw me off. And it was funny because how we have the show scripted is that it's basically the show was scripted up until 4 and then basically everything up after that. And so we were thinking, certainly Jaden Ivey was going to be the guy at 4. And I was going to go on this whole diatribe about why Sacramento made the right decision, because a guy didn't, I don't think you could set a precedent for a guy that doesn't come and you don't have his medicals and, who cares, right? You just draft the best, who you think is the best available. And then Keegan Murray gets picked. I'm like, oh man, we got to change gears here a little bit here. And I mean, he is, I think when you look at Murray and Murray and Ivy, Murray, I think he's more ready to play right now. I would say probably Ivy maybe has a little bit more of the upside down the road, but we talked all week on various shows about all right, so do you go best available and go guard again, right? So now you've got, the 3-guard lineup where you kind of shied away from when you did the Sabonis for Halliburton trade. Or do you go with a player like Murray, who's, I guess in this draft, older, right? He's 22 years old, probably one of the better shooters, probably was the best player in college basketball last year at Iowa, and then has a skill set that can fit next to Sabonis here. So I had no issue. I think it may have been a reach if somebody else was there, maybe if they went Shaedon Sharp, right? This ultimate wild card, haven't seen him play in a year. A lot of upside. That would have probably been more of a risk, but I thought it was solid. I mean, it wasn't oh my God. I thought it was just really, really solid pick. And I know that front office probably fielded a ton of calls at 4. And sometimes, draft night trades with players is really hard. Players on rosters, just to do because you're on the clock, right? So I know you have the trades, the options on your board, but you're on the clock. Hey, Sacramento, you got 5 minutes to pick, right? So now you're getting all these calls. Do we want to give you player X? Would you take Harrison? And it's sometimes you make a bad decision when you're forced to do something like that. So all in all, I thought it was a pretty good night, right? I mean, I think you weren't going to get him at 7. If you had stayed at 7, before the lottery started, he wasn't going to get there at 7. I'm pretty sure of it. So as I said, you get a player that you can play. He's going to play for you right off. He can play 30 minutes and impact what you're trying to do.
I'm curious what you think about this. Monty McNair in his post draft press conference yesterday said he was their best player available. I don't think I've ever heard a GM go up there and be like, yeah, you know what, this guy was the best player and we chose the best fit. I mean, do you think he was truly the best player available there for them? Or do you think there were teams around the league that had him ranked maybe as the 4th best player?
I think the scouting is so hard. I think the draft process is so hard because it's so many different opinions, especially when you get into your own draft room and you've got 12 different voices. And I know Monty probably it definitely has the final voice here. It's like, I said this analogy this morning. It's like you go get ice cream, right? Do you want strawberry, vanilla, chocolate? They're all good, right? I mean, maybe not strawberry, but they're all good. So it's just a matter of what fits. And certainly I think Keegan going there and visiting, I think that helps. I think that I know, as I was saying, you should just pick the player no matter if he doesn't go there or you don't have his physicals. I think him going there, meeting with the, I guess Mike wasn't there yet. But the front office, and having that comfort level, working him out, seeing him in person, I think that certainly goes a long way.
You know, there's been people just talking about Keegan Murray's ceiling, and I just feel like they keep comparing it to what they believe Jaden Ivey is going to be instead of just talking about this individual and what his ceiling is going to be. Do you feel like that's overblown?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talked about Jalen Brunson's ceiling probably 4 years ago. I mean, he got picked 32, I think, and here's a guy who was in college for 4 years, and you know what is he going to be, a rotational guard? Can he be your third backup? You know, like he doesn't have this superstar talent. I think what happens is you just get teased with 18 and 19-year-old players, and you think that they're going to be, you know, I think Shaedon Sharpe is a really good example. Like, you know, he's got, I think, all-star level talent, all-star level upside, but you might not see it 2 years from now, right? So I think there's nothing wrong with taking a player who goes, you know, who is in college for 3 or 4 years. I mean, Herb Jones is not on Keegan's level, but Herb Jones once goes to New Orleans and probably should have made one of the all defensive teams, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, Draymond goes to, you know, 35th, you know, so I have more of a comfort level because I kind of know what I'm going to get. That player is going to be, that player is going to be solid for me.
There seemed like so much noise before the draft about interest in the number 4 pick. Do you think, I mean, I don't know, it may not be fair to ask you about this, but do you think there was anything close there? Like, were you guys hearing anything that maybe they were close to a deal?
I don't think close. I mean, I think you certainly, you know, when you looked at the top 3 teams, I think teams knew that those picks weren't going to be moved out of there. So basically you're staring at, you know, at Sacramento. So I just think we get in I mean, we're going to see it probably in the next couple of weeks. There's so much misinformation out there too, right? Like every team has 12 different trade options that they're thinking of doing. There's no player on your roster that's untouchable, unless you're maybe Steph Curry, and you're just looking for the best fit here. So I mean, yeah, I understand where Sacramento is, you know, as far as, you know, could you have turned 4 into like an established veteran or maybe an all-star level veteran? I didn't see anything out there, and I didn't think it made sense to go get a player who's got maybe 2 years left on his contract who could help you out now instead of a guy who has 4 years. The likelihood is that he'll be here, you know, if everything works out, you know, 8 or 9 years, because of how the contracts are structured here. So I actually did not see anything out there that would have made sense.
Yeah, I think my one thought of it was like, if there was so many teams, and again, you're right, so much misinformation. Who the hell knows what's real, what's not at this time of year? But if there were so many teams interested in Ivy at 4 moving up, I know would have made more sense for Sacramento to, you know, maybe put it out there like, oh no, Ivy's our guy. To incentivize maybe Detroit to like, hey, if we want Ivy, we got to move up to get him. Because it felt like Detroit was like, oh, we'll see what Sacramento does. You know, like we're pretty certain they're drafting Murray, and then they end up getting their guy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could have. I mean, in hindsight, maybe move back. Maybe you move back to 5, or maybe you move back to 6, and maybe you pick up something here. I think there's certainly danger in that, because what happens if Keegan Murray is selected, right? If Detroit, like, you know what? We just traded Jeremy Grant to Portland, and now we need a forward to go with Sadiq Bey, and he's our guy, and we don't need Jaden Ivey, you know. And I think you run into a little bit of you have to have a feel for the draft. And I just think for this draft, certainly after 3, I mean, you look at the top of the draft, right? We all thought Jabari Smith, and then you know, Paolo goes, and then Smith goes to 3, and Chet's at 2, and it's just like there's never anything that, you know, you think is going to go right. So I do think you have to be careful as far as, you know. Hey, Philly, a year, I guess, back with Tatum and Fultz, that worked out where they were. I mean, Philly and Boston, it worked out for Boston where they were at 1, they moved to 3. Fultz goes 1, you pick Tatum, you get another first, right? Like, hey, that's in a perfect world. But man, I do think you do have to be careful, especially like you don't want Detroit to take Murray at 4, and then you're like, oh, we're stuck with Ivy again. You know, that you're staring at Jaden there. But I do think like you know, I don't think it came to the point where Sacramento was scared because he didn't come or he didn't have his medicals, right? I think you throw that notion out the window, because what happens is that there's so many teams that wanted Jaden Ivey, right? So if there was something that red flagged medically wise, we would have heard about it probably somewhere, and those teams probably wouldn't have been interested in him.
You know, yesterday there's something that I was just a little bit, I think we both were a little disappointed about, was the Kings had 2 second-round picks, and they moved on from those deals. And you look at their cap space situation and everything. Were you surprised that they didn't take a swing on any of those second-round talent guys?
I think, certainly you can. I thought this draft was probably 40 deep, maybe even a little bit deeper, because what you saw was some of the international players start going. The stash picks. Procida went to Detroit, I think. Jop went. I don't know where he went, Cleveland maybe. And it just pushes more of the established American players back in the draft. So like they're giving a Kendall Brown from Baylor, for example, like he had a 1st-round grade. Kennedy Chandler from Tennessee had a 1st-round grade and goes 38. So I do think when you look at players in the 2nd round versus the free agent minimum market, right? The guys that you were looking at, who you're continually going to rotate every year, right? Like guys you signed to minimum contract. Well, now they're going to be looking for that replacement next year, where you could have, and I'm not saying you keep both, right? Where you have a player on a 4-year contract with a team option for year 4, and you've got, he could be your Jalen Brunson, he could be your Herb Jones, he could be one of those guys that, I think that player could probably play more than probably that guy that you find in free agency. So I do think you have to be careful trading away 2nd-round picks. I understand if you're in the late 40s, 50s, but I just thought in this draft you could find some pretty good value in the late 30s.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I felt like, if you're Sacramento, you could take a swing on that. And it was interesting, Dallas ultimately is their trade partner. They take a swing on Jaden Hardy, who at one point was projected to be a really high draft pick, did not have a good season with the G League Ignite, but Dallas is like, we'll take a swing at him.
Well, even like the player, I don't know who drafted him, Matteo Spagnola, right? So he is, Italian player. He's Real Madrid has him for 2 years. Probably one of the better point guards, 19 years old, one of the better point guards in Europe. So why don't you just draft him and stash him, right? Maybe you get him in 2 years from now, and that's another player that you can eventually add instead of the unknown of getting a future 2nd and cash along the way. So yeah, that's probably the one thing not just Sacramento, there's a bunch of teams, Orlando trading 35. I know they had 32 already, I think, but trading a pick that's the 35th pick, where I think you could find something pretty good there.
What was the biggest surprise to you on draft night? I don't know, maybe it's something that didn't happen, something that did happen. What jumped out to you?
Well, I think, and I think it's a TBD, because I think what New York did, just based on punting out of the draft, the pick 11 to Oklahoma City, and then basically you take back 3 first. Okay, so hey, great, pick 11 for 3 first, and it's like 50 cents on a dime type first, right? Like the 2 of them, I don't know if you get eventually, because they're so heavily protected with Detroit and Washington. I've been saying Washington, and everybody's been teasing me about how I pronounce the District of Columbia. Malika, she's like, it's not Washington. Get the R out. You got to say it. So I've been practicing this. It's like I feel like I'm back in school with my teacher. So
I feel like people say it that way. You're not the first. You're not the only person to say that. To me, not a big deal.
Well, don't read your Twitter feed about people. Like,
they get after you?
Oh my
God,
about that. I mean that's don't read comments, right?
We need to get like a Bobby Marks mean tweet segment. I'm sure that would be fun.
Oh my God! Don't. Oh my God! Don't. But yeah, no, so for that, I just thought that those 2 firsts will turn into seconds, and then you got the Denver pick that you eventually traded to Charlotte, and then you've got I think a 2025 first from Milwaukee, and then I think it's a TBD, because you're going to go into free agency with some money to go out and spend. And who is that player? Is it going to be Brunson? Is it, I don't know, maybe it's Kyrie or, I don't know. So that's, as you've seen we've seen teams organically build their roster through the draft, right? Boston, certainly, Golden State for the most part. And I think it requires a high level of patience to do that.
You know, Woj had tweeted out before the draft that he had expected a lot of activity, a lot of movement with trades and teams. And I felt like it didn't live up to that. Do you think we're just going to see a lot more coming up to free agency, or just we're not going to see as much as we expected?
We didn't see much at all besides draft picks, right? I mean, really the D'Anthony Melton, Danny Green trade, right? I mean, that was kind of the big Kemba, certainly goes. I mean, that was really just a salary dump. But I thought we would have probably saw Malcolm Brogdon get traded. I thought we'd maybe see John Collins. Those were, names to keep an eye on. I think we'll see, leading up into free agency, we'll see more, just because it's just not a great, it's an average at best free agent class. Nobody really has money to go out and spend. Woj had the perfect line. He said, like, it's like the NCAA portal, right? The transfer portal, right? You just sign these contracts and be like, you know what? I don't want to be in Sacramento after this year. I want to get traded to or transfer to, somewhere else here. And I think that's kind of where we see, I think that's where we're going to see more, probably activity in the next, 10 days here.
Speaking of free agency, King's free agency here. I mean, they don't have the cap space. They've got the mid-level, the biannual. I mean, obviously other teams have that as well. It doesn't offer McNair a ton of flexibility to make any impact moves. What are the challenges for McNair? I mean, he's going into the final year of his contract too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a spot where I would say 2/3 of the NBA are. I mean, reality of it is that I think 10 teams are, tax teams, and they're kind of in that middle area here. So I think it's going to be, certainly you need, I would think, some shooters off your bench. I think that's a big priority here. And so it's a matter of, are you willing to use your full mid-level? I think some of it will probably come in trades. Is Richaun expendable, right? Richaun Holmes, kind of like, how does he fit in, moving?
I was curious what his value would be, because last year was obvious, he got the contract. And by the way, Bobby Marks was dead on with what he said Richaun was going to get before he signed this deal.
Because what it is like, I'm just looking at this market, and it's like almost like the NFL draft, how NFL teams value running backs, right? Like, if you're a great running back, you're going to get paid extremely well, or you're going to get drafted high, right? If you're a serviceable guy who can come in here, like, you basically have to wait your turn, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's either waiting until the picks in the 30s, or your price range is $10 to $12 million in there, like, teams are not like DeAndre Ayton is going to be a fascinating case study here, because, like, is there going to be a team outside of Phoenix that wants to pay him $31 million? Like, we thought maybe Detroit would have been a team. Now they picked Jalen Duren in the lottery, who's making $5 million, right? So it's like, you can use your resources more. But I think a player on his contract in that 10 to 12 million range, and has a couple more years left, has a lot of value. So can you parlay that into maybe that turns into two players that maybe you get a 2 and a 3 that can come off your bench.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because my thought on Richaun was, like, he had a really tough year last year. Like, think about the COVID, the eye injury. He had personal issues he was going through. And then, oh, by the way, they trade for Domantas Sabonis. Like, holy shit. Like, that's a lot to try to process. And Mike Brown's met with him and his agent. Richaun was at Mike Brown's press conference. He's going to buy in. But my thought was, like, I think his value's got to be lower than it probably has ever been. Maybe it makes more sense for the Kings to kind of salvage that and try to, hold on to that and get his value up and maybe move on from him later. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like, maybe there is a chance that they can move him because of his contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a team interested, certainly you're looking at maybe the year prior as far as what he did. And I think you have to take all those different circumstances into play. And just because, there's uncertainty doesn't mean you have to move off a guy. But I think he's probably one of your resources if you are trying to, if you don't want to, if there's not a guy out there in free agency to use that mid-level exception to do so.
And what about someone like Harrison Barnes? Because we keep going back and forth. Like, look, he might be attractive to teams because of his expiring contract, but then again, you look at this Kings squad and they need a solid wing like Harrison Barnes. So what do you see happening there?
Well, he's extension eligible. So do you want to go down that route? You can extend him for an additional 4 years. I think you do run into a little bit of a problem because the market will get better next year. The team, I think, will have maybe 10 to 12 teams that have cap flexibility instead of 4 or 5 this offseason here. So you do run that risk as far as if he just plays out the year on an expiring, that you might you might lose him for nothing. So that's another guy I would certainly, but who can help you right now. So he can help you right now. He's a great veteran. He's a good person. Is he still in the prime of his career, but is he part of your big picture plan?
The next thing I want to ask you about is Donte DiVincenzo. Kings got him at the trade deadline, and he was coming off that injury. He had some nice moments. He's a restricted free agent. What type of market do you think he has? I'm guessing it's probably not super strong because of the cap space that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, there's maybe a team that uses their mid-level exception, which is 10 and change, 10-5, somewhere around there, and puts an offer sheet down. And I think then it will be up to Sacramento to decide. I think unless it's, a crazy number, like maybe we saw Tyler Johnson years ago get these balloon payment, as far as poison pill type contract. I think whatever it is, if it's in that $10 million range, you match it, because then you have him as a tradable player, or you have him as a player that you can bring back.
Taking a step back, I'm curious what you just think of the Kings' approach in general, because they chose a path and they move on from Halliburton. And I thought at one point, like where the Kings were at, they let go of Walton. They had Halliburton at the time. They could have chosen the path of getting rid of Fox, Barnes, Holmes, the veterans, and kind of having Halliburton, Mitchell, get a good draft pick, go that way and rebuild in a sense. And you see what Orlando's doing. You see what Detroit's doing, and all those teams, these young teams have acquired so much young talent. The Kings elect to go a different route, and they're betting on Fox bouncing back. Sabonis still in the prime of his career. What do you think about their decision to kind of choose this path versus the tear down model?
I think whatever you pick, whatever path you decide to go, whether it be retool, tear down, swing for the fences, push all your chips in the middle, you better just stick to it. Right? Like once you do it, like there's no reverting back to something like that. I mean, I saw it in Brooklyn. I mean, like we, and probably the ownership was right, but we want to push all your chips to the middle, and then you want to cut back salary and then not re-sign some of the players that you had traded for. It's extremely hard. It's extremely challenging. Same with probably the Nets are going through right now, as far as, signing both those players, doing the Harden trade, not having many draft assets. It kind of boxes you into a corner a little bit here. So if this is what you want to do, if this is what Sacramento or any of these other teams, just stick with it. Right? Like there's got to be, like, you got to just see it through, even though like I know all of us, our patience level wears thin, right? Like, especially when, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, I mean, you haven't been
16 years,
16 years here. So like, I think people will buy into it as long as you, like, I always say, like, you have to be upfront with people, right? Like you have to tell them, like, this is how we're going to build it. Like, hey, Darren and Domas are our 2 franchise players, right? Like we're going to build a roster around that. We have a coach who's not going to be on the hot seat a year from now or 2 years from now. And I understand when you're a front office who has maybe a year left on your contract, you're trying to win now and, preserve your own future here. So it presents a little bit of a challenge, but as I said, just whatever you pick to do, just stay with it.
Yeah, just commit and stay with that one way, stay true to it. And the Kings, they're obviously picking this pathway, and they have another new head coach in Mike Brown. He had his introductory press conference the other day. What do you think of Mike Brown in Sacramento, that fit?
Well, I mean, I think the fit, based on him being in Golden State for whatever the last 7 or 8 years here, and knows how that organization has operated. Certainly, hey, when you have Curry and Thompson and Green and that group there, like you can. But also, they've drafted in the 20s and they've hit on picks and they've made key trades. They found under the radar guys like Gary Payton and roster like that. So I think there's of course, championship pedigree. Who knows how a roster has been built. And I think it's important. I know he just got there within the week, but going forward, that he's part of the discussion when Monty goes out and does free agent shopping or there's a trade, because eventually what has to happen is Mike has to coach these guys, right? It's like me going food shopping for you and giving you groceries. And you're like, man, this is not what I ordered, right? Yeah. Like, I wanted steak, not, fish. So I think there has to be a, and he said it like in his press conference, how there was a comfort level already with the front office. You all have to be on the same page. Like It's like, and I know the offseason is the honeymoon period, right? Until training camp starts and you're like, oh man, this is not who I thought I was coaching. And you lose some games and stuff like that. But I think you just have to be all on the same page.
Last one for you, Bobby. What's the most intriguing offseason storyline in the NBA for you? Is it the Kyrie situation? Is it the Nets?
You want to do another hour here or what? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think certainly Kyrie, because there's just so many. There's a domino effect, right? Like there's a domino effect, whether it be, he's such a wild card because here's a guy who basically left $18 million on the table with the unvaccinated stuff. And I think when you look at, I can say he's got not much leverage, but at the other end, who's to say he just goes somewhere and plays for $7 million? Yeah. Right? I think that's right. I think, so I think, and then you look at, the markets, as we said, the market's not great. There's not many teams with cap space. The sign and trade market, there's a lot of teams over the tax, so you can't do a deal with that. And I think, what the Durant factor looms, right? Like how much Kevin can say all he want where he's not part of this, and Kyrie Kyrie's his own person and all that. But eventually, Kevin will, if Kyrie does not come back, Kevin will look at the roster and be like, well, this is where I want to spend the next 4 years with. And then that sets off another chain reaction here. So I think for me, I think you have to somehow, both sides have to reach some type of compromise. I think it's in the best interest of both of you. And if you don't want to do that, then I think the front office in Brooklyn and the ownership you have to realize what the consequences are going to be from that.
Wow. Going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Bobby, you going to be at Summer League? I will. Right. I'll be out there. I think the 7th I get out there. So I'll see you guys out in Summer. We get out there the 8th. So yeah, okay, we'll definitely see you out there. And seriously, can't thank you enough for coming on with us the day after.
You're awesome.
I'll see you next June.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We'll see you in a couple weeks at Summer League too. All right, man.
Thank you
Thanks
guys
so much.
Appreciate
That's
it.
the one and only Bobby Marks. Appreciate his time on the Deuce and Mo podcast.
He's the best.
That guy's a gem. That guy's the nicest guy. Oh,
why are we getting blessed with all these great people? I am just so happy with the relationship that we've built with Bobby Marks over the years, just by doing pretty much our day after the NBA draft podcast with him. He always has such great insight. And I mean, what's so great too is that you can ask him anything about the Sacramento Kings and he's so knowledgeable about everything. So interesting stuff.
Yeah. And he had some interesting thoughts. He liked the Keegan pick.
Yeah.
He thinks it's going to be a good fit for Sacramento. The other thing that jumped out to me is him talking about Richaun Holmes and saying that he actually thinks that's a deal that teams would trade for.
Yeah. Contract, obviously still understanding his value in that pick and roll. I mean, we've talked about it, that push shot being stoppable.
That's an elite little push shot right there.
No, and it is when he was healthy and on the floor and with a playmaker like Tyrese Halliburton, good shit was happening.
And then Donte DiVincenzo, he thinks that that's probably a guy that could get the full mid-level, around $10 million. Thinks Sacramento should match it if that's the case, unless it's some crazy-ass deal. So awesome stuff from Bobby Marks. We are going to have another podcast live on Saturday following Keegan Murray's press conference. We'll also be live on Damian and Kenny, D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. I think around noon. We love you guys so much. We need to take a break. We'll talk to you soon. Love you so much, but we gots to go.
You all have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.
Deuce and Mo.